What if I told you the band that outsold their heroes vanished without a sound? No overdose, no scandal, just one voice that gave out and a scene that stopped breathing. Here's how the Cinderella fairy tale shattered.
Like, subscribe, thank you.
The Cinderella didn't come from Sunset Strip glamour, they came from Philly grit. In 1982, Tom Kiefer and Eric Brittingham weren't chasing trends, they were building something sharp and real. Kiefer had soul, drawn from the Stones, Zeppelin, deep blues. Every lyric came from pain, every scream from somewhere lived in. Jeff LaBar joined and the pieces were locked together. Two long-haired guitar players trading riffs, not flash, pure fire. And they were still grinding for gas money when fate walked through the door. It was the Empire Rock Club, smoked out, falling apart, but they played like giants. One guy noticed. John Bon Jovi stood in the crowd, already famous, and he saw the spark and he made the call. Derek Shulman picked up. Everything changed. Within weeks, Cinderella had a major label deal. No demos, no waiting lists, one gig, one phone call. That's all. And just like that, the rocket was lit. But here's what nobody tells you. Fast tracks come with a price. Once the machine starts moving, you don't get to jump off. The Night Songs, their debut album, hits on August 2nd, 1986, like a steel-toe boot. It wasn't polished or polite. It was snarling, leather-drenched hard rock, rougher than what they would later become. And they didn't walk into applause. The lead single, Shake Me, landed with a shrug. Radio didn't care. MTV barely noticed. In the 80s, that was the death knell. But then came Nobody's Fool. Kiefer's voice cracked like glass. Half ballad, half exorcism. Less of a hit and more of a pure coronation of this group. Cinderella wasn't a scrappy Philly bar band anymore. They were in every living room in America. And that video etched into memory. Dramatic, raw, and oddly dangerous. It surged to number 13 on the Hot 100. Somebody Save Me followed, hitting number 66, but by then the engine was roaring. Tours were getting bigger, budgets were getting more bloated. There weren't nobodies anymore, but the countdown had already started. Because the sound that they were selling, it had an expiration date. MTV didn't just break bands, it crowned them. And Cinderella, they looked built for royalty. Kiefer's ghostly glam stare, the smoke, slow-mo hair whips. It wasn't just music, it was full-blown spectacle. And Shake Me didn't hit radio, but the video landed hard. With, of course, Nobody's Fool totally finishing the job. 3 million copies sold, triple platinum. But here's the turn. What made them huge wasn't exactly where they were headed next. Tom Kiefer wanted more raw and real. The glam metal bite that made them the stars, he was already ready to burn that down. In 1986, they hit that road like it was war. No cheats or backing tracks, just pure amps, sweat, and Kiefer's voice ripping through the mix. And their first tour was with Loudness and Poison. Bottom of the bill. No glamour, just pure proving ground. Every grimy venue and brutal set carved them into this sharper weapon. And it was rough. Vans, garbage food, no sleep. But Cinderella didn't coast on looks, they just fought for every inch. And that road, it didn't just make them tight, it completely steered their sound. And by 1987, Cinderella was long from the clubs. They were storming arenas. 5 months on the road with David Lee Roth, riding high on his post-Van Halen solo wave. Should have been a dream gig, but it didn't take long for things to get tense. Night after night, Cinderella was turning heads. Crowds showed up early. Merch tables got busy before Roth even hit the stage. And that did not sit well with David Lee Roth. Tom Kiefer got the message. Tone it down. No speeches, no crowd work. Just say the city name and play the next song. Cinderella was on fire and Ross Kemp could feel the heat creeping up their backs. It was a backhanded compliment, really. You don't muzzle the openers unless they're stealing some thunder. Cinderella weren't just climbing the ranks, they were outshining the icons, and it wouldn't be long before they were the ones setting the rules, at least for a while. Then came the real rocket fuel. Bon Jovi's Slippery When Wet tour. 7 months, stadiums, madness. And at that moment, Bon Jovi were the biggest, as Cinderella rode shotgun. That tour minted stars. Night Songs surged even higher. Cinderella wasn't really just warming up the crowd anymore, they were actually converting it. Every night, tens of thousands watched Tom scream his lungs out, and more importantly, remembered his name. And by year's end, Cinderella wasn't just a stateside success. Japan, Scandinavia, Monsters of Rock in the UK, Germany. They crossed oceans and lit fires. Freaking global surge all the way. And while the world watched Cinderella rise, Kiefer was already veering off script, getting darker and bluesier. The next move wouldn't follow Glam's playbook, it would torch it. Mom Called Winter dropped in 1988, marked the shift. The glam sheen stayed, but the sound was getting raw. Slide guitars, stripped riffs, blues over polish. Kiefer wasn't dressing up, he was just digging in. It was risky, but it worked. And Cinderella was dominating. It stopped being a trend and started sounding more timeless. And this shift delivered the biggest hit, Don't Know What You Got Till It's Gone. Hit number 12 on the Billboard and became a breakup anthem for the ages. And it wasn't all ballads. Gypsy Road, Strutted Hard, Coming Home echoing the Stones. It was much more classic rock. 3 million more albums moved, another platinum plaque. But behind it all, Tom Kiefer's voice was cracking. The pressure was rising, and the toll of their evolution was starting to catch up fast. At their peak, his body was breaking down. The voice that built the empire was starting to buckle, and the next tour would push it over the edge. And Cinderella didn't just promote Long Cold Winter, they endured it. 254 shows in 14 relentless months. Less of a tour and much more of a siege. Night after night, city after city, Kiefer dragged that voice through fire just to keep the wheels turning. The reward? A live reputation carved in stone. They were seen as a formidable force on stage. Nothing proved it like the Moscow Music Peace Festival in August of '89, standing toe-to-toe with Bon Jovi, Motley Crue, Ozzy, Scorpions. In front of thousands of Russian fans, Cinderella did not even flinch. No pyro or anything, just sweat and sound. Meanwhile, Tom Kiefer was riding on the move. Hotel pads, bus seats, anywhere he could. No break or breather. The next album had to come fast. The label was expecting hits, and the voice he needed to make them was already betraying him. Heartbreak Station dropped in 1990. Not a detour, but the road Kiefer was always meant to take. The gloss was totally stripped off. Just a lot of blues and soul throughout. Slide guitars, broken down acoustics. The voice sounded like it had to bleed to get there. The title track was pure ache, Shelter Me, swung like a bar fight wrapped in gospel. And critics saw it for what it was, totally raw and unfiltered. But underneath this praise, something was shifting. It hit number 19, went platinum, solid numbers, but not Long Cold Winter's numbers. The climate had changed, and backstage so had the band. The tour that followed was not a victory lap, it was the breaking point. Tom Kiefer's voice, already shredded from non-stop grind, finally gave out. And Cinderella, pushing the most personal, blues-heavy record yet, were walking straight into the storm that would just wreck them. The Heartbreak Station tour was supposed to lock in their reinvention, but instead it marked the start of the collapse. In early 1991, with a sold-out European leg booked and glowing reviews still fresh, everything was in place for a global breakthrough. But then the Gulf War hit. Fear spread, security fell apart, logistics turned into nightmares. The band and crew voted to call it, scrap the tour and fly home. It became survival, but the damage was real. Europe did not get the shows, the album lost momentum, and for a band already gambling on this huge sound shift, that kind of hit overseas was lethal. They came home with a platinum plaque and no plan. The tides were shifting fast. By the time they tried to regroup, everything had changed. The US leg was worse. Total collapse. Tickets did not move. Packed arenas turned into half-empty rooms, no buzz or interest, just cold beer and silence. And the reason was everywhere. Grunge had arrived. Nirvana, Pearl Jam, Soundgarden. It was a reset button. Flannel buried leather. And Cinderella, they suddenly looked like holdovers from a party that nobody wanted to be at anymore. The fans didn't drift, they vanished. One day Cinderella ruled the stage. The next there were ghosts in front of crowds that had already left. And as glam collapsed around them, Tom Kiefer's voice came out completely. And as glam collapsed around them, Tom Kiefer's voice gave out completely. The timing could not have been any worse. 3 shows, that's all it took. Ticket sales had tanked, costs piled up, promoters hit the brakes, every night was bleeding money. And just like that, it was over. No headlines or big send-off, just buses rerouted home, and a cold silence that said more than any sold-out crowd ever could. It was more than a rough patch, it was the death rattle of a scene. Glam was gone. Sound, the image, the entire world they built swept away. And Cinderella had tried and shifted. They fought to stay in the game, but the wave had already crashed. And as all had unraveled, Kiefer, the band's heartbeat, broke down for good. The diagnosis was brutal. Paresis of the left vocal cord, partial paralysis, hemorrhage, cyst, neurological damage, permanent. He underwent multiple surgeries, each one more invasive than the last. Doctors didn't offer hope. They told him he might never sing again. And it wasn't just personal, it was fatal for the group. You had the tour, which had collapsed, the genre dying, fans leaving, now the frontman couldn't even speak. But at the exact moment the world tuned out, Kiefer was forced into silence, and the timing was just merciless. But Kiefer refused to quit. He fought the odds, endured surgeries, therapy, and years in the dark, and he just rebuilt, totally from scratch. When Still Climbing finally dropped in November of '94, it was too late. The The stage was gone and the spotlight had moved on, but Kiefer still had something to say. Unfortunately, grunge a clean house. MTV shut the door. When Mercury tried to pitch a video, MTV told him not to even bother. Cinderella was, for all intents and purposes, totally blacklisted at this point. And the album was great, solid, gritty, defiant, but it got no push. Peaked at number 178 and then disappeared. So in 1995, Mercury dropped them, just like that, from platinum to nothing. Eric Brittingham said it plain. After that, it was over. And the collapse wasn't just grunge or the voice, it was also internal. Tom Kiefer ran the creative ship, and not everybody was really liking the direction. Tensions were rising over control, money, musical identity. Quiet fractures turned permanent. By the late 90s, they got another shot, signed to Sony by John Calander. The comeback album was in the works, and then Sony pulled out. 3 years of legal gridlock followed. No music or movement, just silence. And meanwhile, demons had resurfaced. Jeff LaBar blamed himself, saying that his drinking wrecked the band, especially on those cruise gigs. Whether that's the case or not, the damage stuck, and the band was broken. In 96, they hit the stage again. No labels or new songs, just the hits and a loyal crowd. In 98, they toured hard, releasing Live at the Key Club in 99, proof that they still had teeth. Dropped again in 2000, they kept going. Tours in 2000, 2002. Smaller venues, same fire. In 2005, they headlined VH1's classic rock Never Stops tour with Rat and Quiet Riot. In 2006, they reunited with Poison for a 20th anniversary run. Nostalgic, but real. Then Kiefer's voice failed again. Another hemorrhage. Another canceled tour in 2008. But by 2009, he was back at it again. Only the festival that they were booked for, Rock Gone Wild, was canceled as well. But Cinderella just kept going into the 2010s, not with new music, but with legacy. Festivals became their stage. Rocklahoma, Sweden Rock, Download, Common Ground, touring with the Scorpions. They joined the Shiprock cruise, leaned into that nostalgia even harder. 2011 marked 25 years since Night Songs. There wasn't a new album, but they had sold-out crowds and a set list that still mattered. And they followed with a full U.S. tour in 2012. But consistency never lasted. In 2013, Kiefer fell ill and they pulled out of the Monsters of Rock cruise. And when they finally played it in 2014, it became their last show. No new music ever came. Still Climbing remained their final studio effort. The tours faded, chemistry unraveled, and Cinderella left without a swan song. And on July 14th, 2021, Cinderella's final chapter was sealed. Jeff LaBar, grinning, relentless, always stage left to Kiefer, was found dead at 58. He had spoken openly about his alcoholism, even blaming himself for the band's silence. Whether true or not, it was honest. But his death really marked the end. Whatever flicker of hope for one last show died with him. And then the next day it got worse. Gary Corbett, their longtime touring keyboard player, also died. 2 deaths, 2 days, Cinderella completely gutted. And after LaBar's passing, though, Kiefer made it clear, there's no more Cinderella. Without Jeff, there was nothing left to reunite anyway. But Cinderella's rise wasn't just another 80s story. It was a lightning strike. From Philly bars to global stardom, built on Kiefer's gravel-soaked wail and LaBar's fire, but the dream just couldn't hold. That Heartbreak Station tour just flopped, and that was right at the inflection point. Kiefer's voice collapsed, grunge took over, and bam, basically a vanishing act that they never really could quite get over. And yet the music still lives, played loud, remembered well, frozen in the moment when they ruled everything. No one saw how fast it would all slip away, and that Cinderella fairy tale didn't fade, it ended in silence. To my subscribers, you frigging rock. Thank you so much. If you haven't had a chance to subscribe yet, pull off your glass slipper and smash it right on that subscribe button. Take the remainder of it and impale the like button. Join the family, and I want to thank you so much for watching.